So this opportunity, it's a collaboration between ourselves and Tatton Park, which is the site of the lab, and Cheshire East Council, which is the regional council, but also the managers of that site. Although the site is owned by National Trust, Cheshire East Council manage and essentially run the programme there. So it's a residential lab. That means you will be staying on site between the 14th and 18th of March 2022. We would like to invite 6 artists. The artists may be independent, individual, or it may be one artist who belongs to a collective and is applying and participating on behalf of a wider collective or a studio that they're part of. The process of application is an online application form, and the deadline is coming up at the end of this month. It's noon on the 31st of January. And it's a fairly straightforward process. It is an application form where you have a few questions to answer, which are about your practice, about the reason you'd like to apply, and also a small opportunity to upload some works. We're not asking for an extensive portfolio on there, but examples of things that you feel represent your recent practice of work. And I'll talk a little bit about our kind of selection criteria later on, but in terms of applying, that's it. You don't need to send us any supplementary documents or drop us an email in addition to the application. They will all be captured within the online platform, which is called Zealous. And then the reviewers will be able to review those before it goes to a selection committee. So the opportunity itself it's intended both as a talent development program, but also a development program for projects. So we're looking for artists who have a desire to participate to either work on a scale that they've not worked on before, to think of ideas that are within the public realm, and proposals for artworks that are perhaps like a step up and an advance in terms of their practice. And that is developing their own artwork and output. Or they may be working in another form and desire to work in XR. You could be coming from filmmaking or sculpture or other image making practices. And this is an opportunity to learn a little bit about, be it VR, augmented reality, or other forms, and particularly at a scale in a public realm. The lab itself will be on site. So you will be within the rooms of Tatton Park, which if you Google it, you'll get a sense of the scale of the site. It's kind of large landscaped gardens, along with a large single building and a number of outbuildings. And we will be looking at the collection within Tatton Park, the art collection, the buildings themselves. We will have tours around the grounds, so you get a kind of deep dive sense of the space and place when you first arrive there. You'll be sleeping on site. There are separate accommodation opportunities whilst there, and we cover your travel as well as the accommodation. What it consists of over those days of the lab, the first day will be very much kind of induction to the place, tour of the site. You'll get a chance to meet the Tatton Park team, the staff there who work with the collection as, working with the public, but also as researchers. There will be people from National Trust. National Trust own the collection of Canalettos at that site. And that will be the kind of first day, a very kind of embedding within the place, getting a little bit to know the site, getting to know the collection of Canaletto images there. From that point onwards, we move much more into this realm of like thinking expansively. So there will be hands-on technology workshops with technologists from HTC, bringing, for example, vFlow works on headsets for you to play with and see and experience yourself. And people from Soda Labs, which is based in Manchester, and they will bring up, again, kind of both technologies to play with, but also talk about case studies of artworks that they produced in-house, the kinds of technologies that they've worked with. There'll be a series of other case studies from artists who have made exemplary works in the XR space within a public realm. So again, you get a sense of possibilities there. And more researchers, people from National Trust, who will be able to show you the collection in more detail, answer questions that you might have in terms of mining the research and collection there. We also have kind of free space where it's much more workshop based, and you will have a chance to not only absorb that knowledge and think broadly about the possibilities there, but to start thinking more specifically about if you as an artist would like to propose an artwork for that space, responding to the site, responding to the Canaletto collection. There will be free time where we, Abandoned Normal Devices, will be present as we're commissioners and producers to try and guide that process along with the technologists and other artists who are present. So it's quite a packed daytime, but then we imagine the evenings will be a little bit more sociable. You will also have the opportunity to meet the other artists, participants, and share ideas about your own practice, learn from others at the site, but also to just absorb being there and being in that residential context where it's away from your regular space of making and away from your regular practice. We are exploring the possibilities of XR, but this is very much based around the collection and in response to the collection of this Italian painter, Canaletto. He was very active. He was born in the late 17th century, but very active in the 18th century. Originally in his native Venice, as a painter of landscapes where some would be commissioned by patrons, some he'd paint for tourists as a kind of a lucrative practice of painting landmarks in the landscape, painting particular sites within the city. But he'd do this often from what are called impossible perspectives, where he'd situate himself at multiple points in the landscape to be able to present an entire cityscape, a point of view that you wouldn't be able to achieve from a single position sitting. Therefore, he's referred to quite often as the original VR. And this is one of the kind of jumping points of interest for us, to use new technologies and new ways of seeing to address his work and respond to landscapes. That kind of movement, if it were a movement, or fashion rather, of painting was called capriccio, or architectural fantasies. And there are many other painters who worked in that style. It became a little bit more unfashionable towards the mid-18th century in Italy, but English patrons started to be attracted to his work, and that in parallel with the war happening, there was an Austrian battle over the reign of Europe happening that impacted Italy at the time, meant that he moved to Britain, and one of his kind of lead agents in a way was a British banker who started to hook Canaletto up with wealthy MPs and estate owners around Britain. So he started to paint in London and spent almost a decade in the mid-18th century in London, and would paint a number of sites around the UK, scenes of England. And for that reason, there are quite a few Canaletto paintings in collections of country houses around Britain. If you're based in London, there are quite a few in the National Gallery. Windsor Castle, which was a collection that was owned by King George III, sold by his kind of banker agent to them. Aberdeen has some which were in some way recently discovered. They were always there, but not known to be Canaletto's. And then Tatton Park has some too, and Upton House, not far from London, also. So yeah, the makeup of the days will be this mixture of kind of very kind of practical, hands-on technological, and then case studies to give the inspirational and your own interaction with both parts of those, and then time to kind of to workshop and think about your own ideas. It will culminate on the final day in an opportunity to present those ideas. It's in no way is it a pitch session. It's not. We're not trying to create a lab where it culminates in some sort of pressure to produce, but part of our interest as abandoned normal devices and part of Tatton Park's interest in running this lab is the possibility of commissioning some projects in the future in relation to this collection, where they're thinking and planning to have a grand exhibition in 2025. So some projects may be taken forward beyond development into further development, into production, and into ultimately commissioning. But that's not the sole intention of it. It's really a mixture of project development and talent development at the site. So in the application forms, you will see it is fairly straightforward in terms of the amount of word count. If you prefer not to write, if you prefer to record a video, you can also do that. And we recommend the maximum length of video to respond. If you just prefer to communicate verbally, you don't have to produce something edited, with a slideshow, etc. It's really just to talk to those and give your responses to those questions in a different form. Those are then assessed by members of the abandoned normal devices team, plus one external reviewer. And then a final selection committee will be made up of abandoned normal devices, Cheshire East Council, Tatton Park, and an external reviewer to make the final selection of 6 artists. We are looking for quality and potential of current practice. So looking at those artworks that you use as examples of your practice, and as I said, it doesn't have to be extensive. You can upload a maximum of 5 there to show, but you might choose to upload 2 works. It can be a link, it can be an image, it can be an external link to a video that embeds in there. So that's one factor. The second factor is within the criteria, we are looking for early stage or early career artists. By that, we do allow you to self-define, but largely meaning people who haven't had a major commission previously or have a very established kind of award-winning blue chip practice. We're looking to develop talent as much as develop projects. You have to be UK based, but you can be from anywhere. And the reason for that is partly practical in that we don't know the conditions of travel in March 2022. It's likely that COVID will still impact things. And secondly, we are interested in continuing to develop some projects. So we'd like people who are able to revisit the site within the UK to be part of it. And I guess thirdly, as a UK-based organization, we want to connect with more UK artists that we haven't worked with before. You don't need a background in XR, so you don't need to have a knowledge of how to make VR or augmented reality, but we would like you to show a little bit your desire of making that leap within the application form, and that will be one of the assessment criteria. And then secondly, that like the reasoning why this is an opportunity of interest to you. So it might be that your practice does address archive or does address other like paintings specifically, or you're interested in working in a museum environment or a context of public art where your practice is not normally having that sort of interaction. You might be interested in architectural imaginaries. That might be specifically what your practice is about, forms of mapping, forms of seeing landscapes. You could very nichely be interested in 18th century Italian painting, but we would be interested in seeing like some exhibition within that application form of why this opportunity is specifically of interest to you. And there are many angles you could come at that. And we're not at all defined as to what we're looking for. We want you to tell us why it's an interesting opportunity for you. That's the general overview of it. And just to say, yes, there's on-site accommodation. If you have access needs, or if there are things we can support to help you participate in that lab that you think may be barriers to it, we're very much there to help make that happen. We just need to know, and you can communicate that upon selection. The location itself it's just, I don't know if everyone's familiar with the geography of it or even looked it up, but it's just south of Manchester and east of Liverpool. And we would be able to support your transport there, whether it's by your own means or by public means of transport to get you there. And we want it to be a creative environment. We want it to be a safe environment. We want it to be an environment where you're encouraged to question that location, your own practice, the collection, to think widely about how you might use XR to produce something within your practice, but also within a public realm.